Yeah,
Good.
thank you for joining us. To the few who are in here so far, we have a great presentation for you tonight, preparing for your primary education interview. And Philip Jeffries, our academic, is going to give you some tips and pointers and information that you might need. Feel free to type questions into the chat or into the Q&A as we go, and then at the end we will answer any that we have in there. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So we are preparing for primary education with QTS and our interview that we do. So we're going to be thinking about a variety of different things during this session, thinking about sort of what we want you to do before the interview in terms of preparation, making sure that you are ready for your interview. We're also going to be thinking about what happens during the interview, the skills that we're looking for, but also what you might expect on the course and if you're thinking of teaching as a career as well. So before the interview, this is sort of a key point to sort of be prepared before you come in for the interview and make sure that you get the most out of the experience as well. I would stress the fact that the interview is sort of important, but it's also a chance for you to find out about the programme just as much as for us to find out about those who are applying to the programme. So you will have applied through UCAS and had your application. And Middlesex do provide information about writing your personal statement as well. If you are invited to an interview after you've applied through UCAS, we will email you with some information about what will be happening for you to prepare in advance as well. If you do have any questions about how the UCAS application works, please ask as well. So what we want you to do is to check out the course requirements. Think about, do you meet all those requirements? What do you need to meet those requirements? A lot of the people who apply will be doing qualifications. So it's, are you predicted to meet those requirements? We also create a pre-course site where you'll be able to get some information, including our programme handbook, module descriptions that explain what our modules are like and what type of topics that you might be covering. We also give you information about not only your first year, but your second and third year as well. And we also look at some recommended readings, things you might read in preparation for starting the course as well, and things that you might find interesting in order to get ready. But also, when you're preparing, we want you to take some time to look at our website for tips on interview types of questions you might get, and the types of different things that will be happening during your actual interview with us. So our entry requirements, what are we actually looking for? Well, in terms of our UCAS points, for A levels, it's the equivalent of 2 Bs and a C, so around 112 tariff points. If you're doing a BTEC, we would like a distinction and 2 merits at level 3 in an extended diploma in education. And if you're doing the access course, we would like 112 tariff points, but 45 credits have to be at merit or higher. Really importantly, though, we do have the requirements that you have English and maths and science GCSE with a grade 4 or higher. So that's the old-fashioned grade C or above. If you haven't got GCSE in English, maths and science, you will need to make sure you're doing something that gives you the equivalent of English, maths and science before you're able to join the programme, as it's one of the requirements of teacher training. And all applicants will have to attend an interview if you're shortlisted for your application. We don't do any offers until after you've had your interview. A few things to bear in mind if you are thinking of joining us. Placements are an important part of teacher training, and you will be doing a placement each year. They're at different times of the year and they're done in blocks. So you'll be spending about sort of 6 to 8 weeks each year on a placement in a school in a different year group. You need to be in different schools for those placements, but we do need to make you aware that we find your placements and you could be placed up to 90 minutes travel time from your home location, either by car or by public transport. We will ask you, if you join us, to tell us details of where you are, and we will try to make it as an easy journey as possible. But you must be prepared for a longer journey if we can't find you a school nearby. Sometimes we do have people with slightly longer journeys, but one thing that's important to remember is only for a limited time that you're in school, and you must be prepared for this sort of possibility in terms of your timing to make sure you're on time to get to school, but you're also making the most of your placement as well. As I said, we do very often manage to place people closer to home, but we only place people in schools that we work with in partnership and are willing to have a student. So the interview process, what is it we're actually looking for? Well, we want to look at all of these things that are on the screen, actually. We want to have a discussion with you about professionalism, how your understanding of what that means. We want to think about your knowledge and awareness of the primary curriculum, the critical reflection and analysis. And by that we mean sort of what your thoughts and how you're interpreting those as well. Also thinking about your values and your ethos. What is it that you sort of stirs you and wants you to become a teacher? Diversity is really important, and recognizing what that means and how we can ensure we're sort of upholding our thoughts of diversity. But really importantly, we want you to be able to work with other people, someone who is used to collaborative learning and working. We want you to be confident in front of a group. Will you be able to stand up in front of a group of people? Just like the fact that if you become a teacher, you're going to have to be standing up in front of a group of children in a class. But we also finally want you to think about an understanding of the expectations of teaching. We recognise teaching can be a challenging career, but it can also be incredibly rewarding. But we also recognise that we want you to be aware of those expectations before you join us. We don't want you to struggle when you're with us as well. So we've got these different things on this picture, and they're all really important. And what we will do during our interview is we do it as a group. We don't have a one-to-one interview. We get you to work together to discuss aspects of primary education. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about those shortly. But we also get you to present in front of each other and to talk to each other, so we can look at all of these different aspects of primary education. So first of all, we'll give you a group logic problem solving task. We give you a series of questions for you to work out together a type of problem that you might use with a class of children. So we can hear how you work together. We can hear how you use your problem solving ideas and how you listen to each other to solve that problem that you might be having. We then will have what we call a performance and linking to the knowledge of the primary curriculum. So what we mean by that is we'll ask you to bring along a poem that is suitable for primary age children, normally around a year 5 or a 10-year-old. And we'll ask you to present this to some of your fellow candidates. But we don't want you just to read out a poem and sit down. What we want you to do is to perform the poem, use some expression, get us gripped about what's actually happening, and then explain to us how that poem links to what you know about the primary curriculum in that particular year group. Is it a poem that has a cross-curricular link to another subject, such as history or geography? Is it a poem about a famous person? Why might that be a suitable poem for someone in year 5? And most importantly, can you present it clearly as well? Now, we do know that some people will be nervous and will need to have some sort of a little bit of time to be ready. So we will make sure that you're comfortable before you start. But it's a good way of showing how you might present to a class full of children, which you would be doing as part of the programme. We then also think about an understanding of the expectations of a good teacher. And we go back to working as a group with you thinking about what are the qualities of a good teacher and why are they important? Which ones are more important than others as well? So we ask you again to talk to each other, to work together, to be able to share your thoughts on that. And the tutors who will be leading this interview will be listening in and are maybe even asking you some questions about why you've picked different aspects. So that's why we really strongly recommend that you prepare well for your interview. In any invite to an interview, it'll explain to you about bringing a poem and anything else. And we make sure that you've practiced and we want you to be ready to do that. If, for example, you'd come to our interview and you've forgotten to bring your poem, we will provide you with some poems, but sometimes that means you haven't had time to practice them enough. So one of those aspects was talking about Middlesex characteristics, the characteristics that make up what we think is a great teacher. And these are just some of those different aspects that we want to make sure we include. And we want to make sure you have some of those qualities that would make you a good teacher. So we think about communication, listening, talking, recognizing those non-verbal communications, things that you'll use in school. But as well as someone who's good at communication, we want you to be compassionate, a caring, genuine person. Really importantly is that idea of being motivated, committed, enthusiastic. The fact we want you to be that person who wants to be a teacher and will make a great teacher as well. Importantly, there's always that recognition and understanding of diversity and equality. We're going to be hoping that you recognize the importance of this when you become a teacher as well. We think about using our initiative, team working, willing to work together, problem solving, dealing with stress and how you might be responsive to that. But we also want you to be punctual, reliable, dedicated, well-informed, reading suggested readings, reading around topics, finding out about things. And this might lead into those leadership and management skills and ultimately being confident and inquisitive. And we love it when people ask questions as well. So what we've created at Middlesex is the characteristics that we think make up a great Middlesex student teacher. You might be thinking that the writing is on a slope, but actually that's deliberate because we want it to be a little bit off centre, because we want you to not only be a great teacher, we want you to have all of these different characteristics as well. We want you to think, are you a sideways thinker? That phrase of thinking outside the box, but are you kind, fair and inclusive, thoughtful, reflective? We do want you to be critical of top-down initiatives. That's where we get things we have to do from senior management, from the government, from the Department of Education. But we don't want you not to do them. We want you to think about them in a critical way. In other words, thinking about how you can make those initiatives the best for a class of children that you are teaching. So part of our interview, we'll look at these characteristics and we'll ask you to think about which ones you think are most important, which ones are least important. Are there some that are equally as important? But most importantly from this activity is we want you to explain why you think they're important. So some of the activities we do, like looking at the characteristics of a Middlesex student teacher, is that we want to make sure that you're able to discuss these points. And we also recognise that sometimes there's no such thing as a right answer here, because if you can justify it, then it's a good answer. So mentioned before about transferable skills and the skills that we want to actually have. And these are the types of skills that you will develop when you're at university on your practice, in work and beyond. So lots of these things you would have already started to develop during your pre-university studies or your work experience. The idea of listening and communicating, teamwork, motivation, prioritization, professionalism, being reflective. But also we recognize that some of these things you might not have had a chance to do, and we want to see that you're able to start developing those. So we might not want you to be an expert in all of these areas at interview, but we want you to recognize the importance of those. And these are the skills that you will pick up as you move through your training with us as well. But at the interview, if you are used to delegating, talking to other people, doing some research, then tell us about those type of things and show us how you work together as a team in some of those joint activities that you're going to be doing. And it's really important that we see some of those things. So don't be afraid to share some of your experiences that you've had. So I've covered quite a few different bits there already, but I want to go back to some of those other points that I've actually made to make sure you're properly prepared for an interview if you come to join us. So firstly, I want you to be prepared to work together with other people as a team and making sure that you're able to talk to people you might not have come across before. We're likely to be in a room where you'll sit around a table in small groups, so don't be afraid to talk to each other. Also want you to be prepared to read out a poem and to be able to do that. So think about what poems, talk to people you might use, or even Google poems that are suitable for children of around 10 years old or in primary school. But don't forget, as well as reading out that poem, make sure you practiced it, but also have a chance to think about why is this a great poem to use with children at primary age. And the next thing to think about is those characteristics of a primary school teacher. What are a good characteristic and why? Now, so far, most of our preparing for our interviews sounded like we're going to be in groups, and you will be mostly in a group. But we do have a very short piece at the end where we have a one-to-one opportunity. This isn't a one-to-one section of questions that we ask. This is a chance for you to ask us some questions as well, finding out about the programme, finding out about placements. So don't be afraid to come with some questions to ask. You never know, we might have already answered them as we're moving along, but also there's a chance that you might want to check as well. So don't be afraid to ask us some questions. We may ask you some things, but we also want to have that chance for you to ask us. Because what's really important is that not only do we pick someone we think will be great on our programme, we also want you to be able to think that Middlesex is the place you'd like to be as well. So we are going to see if there's any questions now as well. And I can see, I'm going to hand over to Molly, who's got access to the questions.
It looks like, yeah, we do have one question, and to those students who are still with us, feel free to add anything else into the question box. But There was one about when will interviews happen. So maybe if you have any sense of timeline with when the
Yeah,
applications finish and then how long after the interviews will
we,
occur. That would be
that's a
great.
really good question about when interviews happen. We've already started some of our interviews because we interview for our PGC and our undergraduate, and we interview throughout the year. So what we would say is get your applications in and you'll be invited to an interview. I believe you'll get a choice of dates that you can come, but we will be interviewing from very soon. We've already started some interviews last week, and we'll be doing interviews regularly, and it's almost at least one or two interview sessions each week up until the end of the summer term. So we'll be interviewing for quite a long time. So if you know you can't make some dates, there will definitely be other dates that you'll be able to make. So on interview, you will either have a morning or an afternoon session, and you'll be able to pick that. If it's a morning session, you'll come around between 9:30 and 9 o'clock, and you'll have a chance to register, have a look around the campus before you come to the interview as well. And in the afternoon, they mostly start around between 1 o'clock and 1:30. And have we got any other questions?
Yes, it looks like a couple more are coming through.
Brilliant.
You mentioned we were going to be in groups with interviews. How many people are there usually in each group?
Yeah, so it really varies. We try to keep a maximum of between about 12 to 16 people. What we do if we have, say, 12 people, is we will sit you in smaller groups during the group. So you might find that you're sitting with 3 or 4 other people during the interview when we move you around. But we have had some interviews where we've had about 6 people. We've had some interviews where we've had about 16. So it can vary. But we give you the same amount of time to ask us questions and also to share your poems as you would do if there's a small group or a large group. But the maximum you'll probably be fined, I think, will be between 12 and 16 people.
Great, thank you. We do have one last question in the chat as well, which is for the presentations, would you like students to bring a copy of the poem with them?
Yeah, you don't have to bring a copy. Obviously, do bring one to read. We're not expecting you to memorize the poem. And we never say no if you want to share the poem with us. Just make sure you know who wrote it, if it's got an author. Sometimes poems don't. And if you want to bring along any resources, you can do. You won't have the opportunity to use things like PowerPoint presentations, but in the past we have had people who have shared their poem. We've had people who've even bought a puppet before now and used those as well. But you don't have to go over the top as well. It's really about that sort of using your voice to present it and telling us why it's important. Some people do bring their poems on their phone, so they read it off their phone, and that is absolutely fine. Some people bring it on paper, and that's also absolutely fine as well.
Great, thank you. We actually, one more question's come through. When will we know if we get accepted to Middlesex?
So after your interview, it's normally relatively quickly afterwards, we will notify our admissions team or the tutors who have interviewed you will notify the admissions team of their decisions, and they will notify you through UCAS, and it will tell you if you've got an unconditional offer. This is where you've already met all the requirements to join, or it might be, and then I would say most people have this type of offer, which is a conditional offer, which normally means that you have to, it might be that you haven't got your A-levels yet. So once you get your A-level results, it will transfer over. I would say normally that only takes a few days between the interview and you finding out what you do. I normally recommend at an interview that if someone hasn't heard and it's been a week or so since the interview to give our admissions team a call, and they will be able to help find out. But most of the time, you find out within a few days. Excellent. Any other questions that anyone's got? These have been really sensible questions so far.
If not, I actually would love to end on maybe a fun note. And Philip, if you have I'd love to know what your favorite part about teaching at Middlesex is, or your favorite thing about primary education and the program itself. And yeah, just love to hear your opinion on that.
That sounds great. Well, primary education at Middlesex, we are a great team. There's not very many tutors in our team. We have about between 8 to 10 tutors who teach different subjects. So, for example, you will see me teaching English and some RE and some inclusion subjects, and we have other tutors that teach other subjects as well. And what's quite nice about our program is that we've all been primary school teachers at one point. So we know exactly what it's like to be a primary school teacher. But also we are Middlesex teachers as well. So we like the fact of being not necessarily quirky, but we like to really make sure you get a good experience of different things. So you'll get the chance to visit museums with us. You'll get the chance to go on placements in schools. You'll get the chance to go to visit special schools. So I think what is really nice about Middlesex is that we're not too big, so we get to know all of you, but we're big enough so you get to have all the experiences that you would expect from a really good university. And I think I can see another question that's come through.
Oh, yeah, there's one more coming in. How many days a week do you usually go to placement?
Okay, so how our placements work is that we generally, at the moment, you will have some time in university and you'll be in the university all the time. And when a placement starts, you go out for all 5 days a week, and you do that for about 6 to 8 weeks in one block. So we call them block school experiences that you have. We don't very often do times where you are in school some days of the week and then back to the campus for others. We keep them as blocks that you have. So when you're on a school block, you'll adopt a normal sort of teacher's timetable. So that's normally starting about 8:15, between 8 and 8:15 in the morning, and then being there till about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on all the different things that you've actually got to do. But when you're on placement, you're not left on your own. You have a mentor and a university linked tutor that help you through your placement.
Okay, great. I don't think there's any more that come through. We just have had a thank you.
One more has come through.
Yeah, there was just someone saying thank you. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. If there aren't any other questions, then we can finish here. Feel free to scan the QR code on the screen as well to join us for our open days and campus tours as well. You can email us too if you do have more questions about the program or about how to apply. Yeah, I don't think there's any other questions coming through, so we can finish off here. Thank you to the students for joining us, and thank you again to Philip for giving us all your insight and knowledge. It is very valuable.
Yeah.
And yeah, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much. I hope you see some good applications soon.
Yes, hope so.